When you said something, Amud is not only singular color, plural color. Our Daniel, same as Daniel, the prophet, was special by being a minister in his time, a minister of the king, and at the same time, a righteous person, a tzaddik, a true tzaddik that every day cry for Jerusalem and teach us how to pray. This is the connection I find with Daniel, our Daniel, all of us Daniel, that was very special and very successful in everything he does. In his spiritual life, in his Torah study, in his prayers, he was always there to teach many of us. And goes with the work and family and health and balance. He was an example of balance. He was an example of someone that knows how to do everything the best. Very competitive and never go for less than the best. Daniel, you coming here on your last way to Eretz Israel, you Nachalat Avot, where you always love, and you passing by your synagogue, Magen Avot synagogue. Your Sefer Torah is inside here. You're going to read from it on Shabbat. Your seat is here. Your family is here. You are president of the synagogue for years, working for 2 hours, 1.5 hours for Shabbat, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, until you build your own synagogue to accommodate people near you. So many people start to keep Shabbat because of you. So many people increase their kosher keeping, increase their study, increase their know how to pray. Because I knew every time someone leave in the area and I'm going to give the number to Daniel, that fellow will get a class from Daniel how to pray, how to read, and attention. And sometimes in a big synagogue you can't get it. And this is our Daniel. Everything goes not less for the best. So Daniel, all this for you, every effort you did for this community, for your family, for Am Israel, for sure are standing by you, for sure will be always by you. And here, on behalf of the community, on behalf of the family, I'm asking you, Mechila or Slicha, if we did not treat you to the best level that you deserve. So I ask you, Mechila or Slicha, in the same occasion, on behalf of everybody, we are Muchel Vesoleh. We never did anything bad to any of us. But we are Muchel Vesoleh. And we ask you to come in front of Hashem, as we knew this entire 1.5 years. The doctor said, if it's 1% that can go out of it, is Daniel. We ask you to come in front of Hashem and shake the Kisei HaKavod and asking Hashem, Ad Matai? We want to see Geulah. We want to see Mashiach Tzidkeinu. We want to see you back with us. We cannot imagine the boys in the synagogue, in Chagim, in Shabbat without you. Cannot imagine life without you. And I'm sure you're gonna be, although you're going to Israel now, but you're staying in our heart, in each and every one of us. You're always gonna remain in our heart, in our memories, but the standard, the highest standard you demand every time, so serious and so to the point. It can be very serious in sport, and then it goes to Torah, he is very serious there. Goes to prayer, he is very serious there. Goes to Chinuch, education. Everything it takes to 100%. So take Hashem to a task and saying, Hashem, Ad Matai, Ad Matai, Ad Matai. I want you to please be Ma'atir, Tachat Kisei HaKavod, to your amazing children, the amazing wife, that the entire period of the last 18 months that you suffered, they've been always near you, always on your side, never left you alone for a second, always take care of you. So please be Ma'atir on Shamayim. Be'ezrat Hashem, there will be no more tzar for them. Be'ezrat Hashem, Lawrence will manage to bring them to Torah, to Chuppah. We as a community, Be'ezrat Hashem, will be with you. We'll never leave you alone and support everything you need. Be'ezrat Hashem, follow the path, and follow the standards of Daniel. Always high standards. Also, please, Daniel, be Ma'atir Shamayim for your mother. It's not going to be an easy one for her. Pray for her that Be'ezrat Hashem should be able to come out of it. And as we say for Hasidim, in the last several years we learned Chavuta together. We started with Gemara, we continued to Tanya, Hasidut. We say Hasidim never say goodbye. We say להתראות. אנחנו נוסיף סור עם תחיית המתים בעזרת השם. ירושלים הבנויה.
First few words. Let's see if I can get through all of them. For nearly 15 months now, I've constantly imagined and replayed this exact scenario. From the moment it became clear that your condition was winning the battle to save you, though the prayers did not stop and our hopes for a miracle endured, we began to believe we could internalize what was to come. But nothing could have prepared us for the deep pain and emptiness that has set in over the past few days. To attempt to summarize someone's entire life in a few words is a monumental task. To do so for a man who never stopped to dedicate his life for the sake of others, my father, it is near impossible. Dad, Daniel, I know that if you were here with us right now, you'd be so embarrassed that anyone was preparing to speak about you at all. I can picture you standing right there, your arms crossed, and a playful smile on your face, ready to brush off any attempt to praise you, with a joke or with a smart comment. But as your son, I also know that this would only mask your total attention to detail and perfection. What did you mean by this? You asked me. Do you really think that of me? You're an enigma in the most ideal and perfect sense of the word. A man who existed in a way most could not begin to wrap their heads around. When we had felt that we had finally solved the riddle, there was another level, another development to your character, another mission you had taken on, another challenge you had persevered through. For those of you here who have met my dad in the public sphere and have grown closer and more personal to him over time, you know exactly what I mean. Confident, strong, charming, turned to humble, warm, contagiously funny, just moments apart. When people speak about a man who has a presence, I cannot help but wonder when they have met my dad. He could enter a place and not say a word, keep his head low in humility and respect, and still command the totality of the space he was in. Dad, you're an enigma because for you the line between individuality and altruism are one. When you established with the help of the rabbis a small communal minyan or prayer group at our home so that the community members who lived in our area could walk to the Shabbat services and hear the Torah reading without fear of transgressing the Shabbat, it wasn't for personal aims or for personal preference. Because anyways, we know full well that if you had wanted to hear your own tune in the Maganavot synagogue, we would have heard it, loud and beautifully clear. I remember vividly the first minyan we hosted. After the Friday night dinner at home, you rushed me upstairs to practice the Torah reading for the following day. A reversal of the years prior when you single-handedly taught Rachel and I our Bar Mitzvah parashas in the same way. You urged me to focus, and we stayed awake until the late hours of the night. The next day you came to my room much earlier than usual and woke me up, fully dressed, holding the same chumash in your hands, ready to perfect the practice, the reading, and practice the reading for that afternoon. My dad was not Chazan, he never read from the Sefer Torah before aside from his Bar Mitzvah. And I later learned that you hadn't slept the whole night. Due to the fear of not perfectly reading that afternoon for our guests. man who had moved his life across the entire world to a land unknown to him, who worked on the most complex engineering problems in the army without a sweat, and dealt and negotiated with the most influential clients in the region, yet my dad was only concerned, only truly nervous, when he had to prepare for a small group of 7 guests for what would seem to most like an inconsequential Saturday prayer. In building that neighborhood, we brought people closer to the religion, as Rabbi mentioned, allowed them to reconnect with their sense of identity and feel at ease, but all the while you encourage them to participate in the larger community events, attend weekday services, and move closer to the synagogue, even if it meant depleting our own tight reserve. You nurtured and inspired so many to grow into vital members of the Jewish community here in Singapore. The home of your youth was Israel, and of your wisdom was Singapore. And to you, contributing and building these two were of total importance. The pattern was on you, though, and followed you wherever you went. For those guests that visit our synagogue behind and see where our families sit, they would be mistaken in thinking that we have been here for hundreds of years, or that he had taken up a seat in the front row for a host of individual reasons. For those of you who know, the actual reason is much simpler. We weren't always sitting there. When my dad made the decision to switch seats to that location when I was about 8 years old, it was the quietest and emptiest place in the synagogue. A lot of the elderly regulars would sit in that area, far away from any exits. What he definitely did not anticipate was that it would become a new node within our community. He religiously avoided speaking in the synagogue and focused completely on his prayers, contributing only the strength of his voice and love for the beautiful Jewish tunes. Dad, you always tell me that this was your front row seat to your discussion with God. His seat now represents the cornerstone of what many have come to lightheartedly call the French and Israel colonies of our synagogue. The initial landing site for so many new community members unaware of its past. While you were unwell, we experienced an entire Jewish calendar year without your complete presence. I began to interrogate each day in every and festival, attempting to guess which days would hurt the most. It quickly came to my realization that nothing was to be spared. You had pervaded all aspects of our lives. The first Shabbat, without you, was heart-wrenching, without your beautiful voice for the Kiddush and the commentaries of the week's parasha. The counting of the Omer, assiduously reminding us that yesterday we counted 4 days. Shavuot and your elucidations of Megillat Ruth and the mitzvot aseh and not aseh, which you were so careful to adhere to all the days of your life. The fast days and the noticeable hole that was left without your reading of the mournful kinot, and the high holidays. Probably the one most of us here will remember, your contribution and participation to the selichot that became so integral to so many of our community's experience. Your prayer of Eloheinu v'Elo Avoteinu, where you prayed so passionately for the success, the health, and joy of your entire community. Building Sukkah at home, sharing with us stories of the magnificent piece of engineering you used to create in your time during your childhood in Bat Yam. Simchat Torah, the pure, unadulterated joy of your dancing with the Torah without a drop of drink. Pesach, for those of you who had the pleasure of participating in the center with my dad, will know the lengths he went to ensure everyone was involved in retelling the Exodus. Putting his blue Haggadah aside, a clone copy of the one his father owned, to go around the table and translate each and every word in English and in French, to sing Etmol Haynu Avadim in Tunisian, the Beluya in Moroccan, Al-Ahmania in the Baghdadi tune, and Chad Gadia in Arabic and Hindi, and Chad Yodea in Hebrew. In Judaism, we have a philosophy known as Hashgacha Pratit, which in English roughly translates to divine providence. It's the idea that God does not exist solely as a superior being above mankind, but is constantly and actively involved in our day-to-day existence. It is a term that my dad had begun to use a lot in the past few years, to the point where me and my siblings would sometimes joke with him about it. To us it seems so strange. How can a man so dedicated in science and rational thinking, so against superstitions, could believe that even the most minute detail was attended to by God. The past year has put all those thoughts to rest. Sunday evening, Dad drew his last breath at the beginning of Kaf Hay, or the 25th of the Jewish month of Tamuz. This is exactly 30 days after the memorial for my grandfather's death, his father. All those years ago, that affected him so much on the 24th of Sivan, corresponding exactly to the 30 Jewish days of mourning, or the Shloshim. Hashgacha Pratit. We currently find ourselves exactly within the 3 weeks, a period of the most intense sadness for the Jewish people, as we mourn the destruction of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. The enigma continues, a date that no one will fail to forget to mourn. Yet it is as if you didn't want to impose any additional sadness or suffering on the people you love. During the Shiva, our appearance, our dress, and our customs will be similar to many other Jews observing the tradition of the 3 weeks. Hashgacha Pratit. The tractate of the Talmud that we are learning now with Rabbi, with the daily study group that you and Rabbi Nathaniel created, was intended to be completed on Shavuot a few weeks ago. It is now looking more like we will finish the tractate in time for the end of your Shiva B'Yadeh. Hashgacha Pratit. Before your condition worsened, and just as we had emerged from COVID quarantine about a year ago, we prayed Shacharit at the same time at home, me and you. You sat me down, and you told me directly for the first time in my life that it was imperative for me not to skip sections, and more importantly, to take extra precaution to read the Akedah every morning. The story of the Binding Yitzhak. In it, I have finally found solace in the message that you have sent to Raphael, Anel, Gabriel, and myself. Hineni b'ni, I am here, my child. In the past year, Dad, you've suffered greatly, physically, with your battle for your health. You were there for us, you were there with us, even when it seemed that you weren't. Spiritually, the loss of your ability to continue the fruits of your labor and good deeds pain you. As did the losses you've had to endure with your teachers and close friends in the past year. Uncle Harry, Rabbi Chaim Gurovich, and of course your brother and my dearest uncle and teacher, Michael Shubon Arel, who had said goodbye to you only a few months prior. May you be reunited with them, with all your friends and teachers who you had lost before. May your soul be at peace, lifted to the highest level of Gan Eden where you belong. Amen. You are at peace, but the suffering will be ours to bear, now and forever. We will not stop building and growing what we have started. Your plans and dreams were not for nothing. We will not let you go. I love you, Papa. Thank you for everything. Oh, thank you.
Just a few words about my friend Daniel, who was indeed a dear friend. A man who, as we all know, had several wonderful qualities that are definitely worth emulating. Among the many qualities that stood out for Daniel, and I kept learning from these, were his deep and abiding love for Israel, his love and his deep commitment to his family, his involvement with the community, and his continual focus. A focus that was so laser-like that I used to be amazed at how much he was completely absorbed with this idea of not being idle and using every moment that Hashem granted him as if it was a precious gift, never to be wasted. Time was always of the essence, and things had to be done now, and time had to be utilized in the best way possible. Besides all this, in my mind, that stands out so vividly, as Emmanuel and Rabbi Nathaniel referred to, was how at the times when he was in good health, and also when he was not in good health, how his very presence was so crucial in bringing people together around the idea of Torah and mitzvot. 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, when I was living the street away from Daniel, and when the Queen Astrid Minyan began, it was for me so liberating and so enabling, because it enabled me and my family to keep Shabbat in the way in which it should have been kept. Certainly impacted me very positively, but even more broadly, it drew in people into the Queen Astrid Minyan, who very often might not come to synagogue at all, or even those who came but felt awkward. And the Minyan at Queen Astrid was one that provided an environment that was so liberating and so enabling that everybody felt connected, and it drew more and more people in. And even when Daniel was unwell, for a little over a year, we began in May of 2020, we started these Zoom sessions for his refuah shlema and to provide comfort to the family. But even beyond the Zoom sessions that were for his refuah shlema, it brought us as Jews together in a common cause around Torah. And I think we can see from this that Daniel, in times of health, in times of sickness, directly and indirectly contributed to bringing Jews around a common cause for the greater glory of God. For me personally, it was Daniel who asked me to say a few words every Shabbat. I am no Torah scholar by any means, but as a result of his insistence, it compelled me to dwell in and elevated myself beyond even what I knew was personally possible. It forced me every Shabbat to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm not a morning person. I was to wake up at 6:37, read the Torah, read insights, and try to garner something that could be of value that I could share with the Minyan at Queen Astrid every Saturday morning. And so on that note, continuing with what Daniel asked me to do, I want to say a few words in relation to the parasha of this week, which is the week of Daniel's passing, the parasha of Matot Patseh. And again, you speak of Hashgachat Pratit. It's no coincidence that this is the parasha when the Jews are about to enter the land of Israel, just as Daniel is. In this parasha, we see a reference to the tribes of Reuben and Gad, who are about to enter the land, but they've got different thoughts. They believe that the land that they're going to is not ideal for raising cattle, and they decide that they would prefer to stay on the east bank of the Jordan because their objective is met by the nature of the land that is conducive to raising sheep. And this, understandably, upsets Moshe. And he tells them, are your brothers to go to war while you stay here? Why would you discourage the Israelites from going over to the land that the Lord has given them? And he reminds them of the disastrous consequences of the incident of the spies. But in this particular instance, the situation is different. Because the tribes of Reuben and Gad come to Moshe and they tell him, we would like to build sheepfolds for our flocks and towns for our children. But we will arm ourselves and go as an advance guard before the Israelites until we have established their home. So they're saying, we want to settle here, but we're not averse, we're not scared of fighting the enemies. We'll go, not only will we go as an advance party, we'll conquer the land, and we'll facilitate the settlement of the Jews in this land. This is the compromise that Moshe actually accepts. But what's interesting, if you look, as always, as it happens in the Torah, there's not only text, but there is subtext. And if you look at the subtext, the words that the tribes of Reuben and Gad use was, we would like to build our sheepfolds for our flocks and towns for our children. And what does Moshe tell them? He tells them, reversing the order of the nouns, build towns for your children and sheepfolds for your flock, but do what you have promised. The ordering of these nouns here is critical because the tribes of Reuben and Gad put their sheep before their children. But Moshe says, build your homes and then take care of your sheep. He in fact puts the children before property. They paid more regard to their property than to their sons and daughters, because they mentioned their cattle, their sheep before their children. And Moses says, not so. Make the main thing primary and make the subordinate thing secondary. First build your cities for your children and then only your flocks. What more fitting a tribute could we provide Daniel than this? A man who dedicated his life first and foremost to his family, to building them up, to educating his children in a way where he imbibed in them those qualities that are so critical for the continuity of the Jewish people. Everything else was secondary. What was primary was the continuity of Jewish life, and he lives on, therefore, through his children and through his family. You know, we are at the end of Bamidbar, and as we come to the end of a book of Torah, we say the words Chazak, Chazak, V'nitchazek. Be strong, and may you be strengthened. And it's almost Daniel, as if by going at the end of this chapter, is calling out to all of us, to his family, to say, be strong, and may you be strengthened. This is our wish, this is our prayer. In the words of a poem that, it's not Jewish, but I relate to it and I find it very, very moving, a poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson, Ulysses. His words come to mind and it says, though much is taken and much abides, and though we are not now that strength which was in old days, moved heaven and earth, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And that is Daniel's message. To strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. To live on in the merit of the numerous good deeds and acts that he had conducted all his life, to emulate his ways for the greater good. Farewell, my friend Daniel. May your memory be a blessing. Amen.
Amen.
שיביתי אדוני את דוד ימיני בלבונך שמח לי במרד יהודי הפסרי שכול הבאת פילות תחזור בנשי לשור ונפסך לירושם ואיני לא חיים סוף מעשה בכל את פניך לימור מלבנצח
grandmother, thank you all so much for being here. Where to begin? I'll start off with a joke. Ease things up a little. An old Jewish man and a young Jewish man are traveling on the train. The young man asks, "Excuse me, what time is it?" The old man says nothing. "Excuse me, sir, what time is it?" Again, the old man stays silent. "Sir, I'm asking you, what time is it? Why don't you answer?" The old man says, "Young man, the next stop is the last on this route. I don't know you, so you must be a stranger. If I answer you now, there will be a relationship between us. I will have to invite you to my home. You are handsome too, and I have a beautiful daughter. You will both fall in love, and you will want to get married. So tell me, why would I want a son-in-law who can't even afford a watch?" But don't get it confused. This old Jewish man is quite different from my great father. First, my dad didn't really care much for watches or material goods, and he would often speak with pride that he shared the same sentiment Uncle Victor. Secondly, my father would never turn away from anyone in need, anytime someone asked or speak to him. Yeah. But the old Jewish man and my father had a close link. In that both of them had an innate feeling of responsibility to help the fellow stranger. I'm gonna need your water bottle. Yeah. For mostly newcomers, sometimes total strangers, in Singapore to our home in Shabbat, to looking over his family in France, Israel, and here, and much more. To be honest, the extent to which he took care of others, I'm still trying to comprehend and I'm understanding every day. That's all the message to it. And the crazy thing is, he had all of this, and he never made a big deal of it either. Among all, he was firm in his principles and yet supportive as we began to see growth. He encouraged and comforted, but he never scared. And above all, he did it with love. He tested his patience. I know I did. Yeah. I'll give you one example. So a few years ago, 2016, I had recovering from like a knee ligament operation, and it was about a year and a half after that. The doctor was saying you're okay. Everyone was saying no, it's fine. Physiotherapist was saying it's fine. My dad looked at me and said, "Really? I don't think you should be playing basketball." He said, "Rafael, really? I don't think you should be playing basketball. You're going to the army soon. I think it's something a bit dangerous." Of course, young, you believe in yourself. I know I'll play basketball. I love this game. I'm okay. Turns out I got injured, and exactly what he said happened. I tore my ACL exactly another time. And I came home that day, and I told my dad. Of course, at first it's a bit like you could see this happening. It hurts him to see this, and almost like a switch. Immediately, it turned from I can't believe this happened to you need to get better as soon as possible. He was there. Every step of the way. So, really, I mean, everything. Of course, he was there for the first one. And
The second one, he doesn't really have an obligation at this point. He did everything. But he had patience and love. So he came. Of course, MRI, he waited outside. Doctor's appointment. Small doctor's appointment, he was still there. I mean, we're talking about the most minute thing. Surgery and everything, you name it. He put everything aside to be there. Everything. And this is a pretty personal example. I think many might be wondering why I'm sharing this. The truth is, I'm talking about my father here, but in the same sense, you'll realize more with time, there's a whole generation of people that have been blessed by the same love that my father has given them. There's a whole generation of people with which my father showed them the way with dignity, without ever being overbearing, with patience and with love more than anything. He was truly a father figure for many others too. In his last book called Morality, Rabbi Zifoni Baba, he speaks of how since the liberalization movement of the 1960s and started in Western governments, we have seen a world that's once driven by morals to be a world driven more purely by market-driven economics. The problem is that for many things in life you can't leave it to markets. And my dad innately understood that. He was exceptional, of course, in the markets, but he always had this understanding that there was so much more to life. Rabbi Sachs finishes the book by saying he doesn't really know where it will go. He says that things have become so separate. Communities are sort of devoid of that spirit. That he says that it's really up to the next generation. And as I finished that, I took a lot of comfort in understanding that I think one of my dad's greatest enduring legacies is that he has shown a clear path, a clear way to how to move forward in the world tomorrow. To lead with dignity, to lead with care, to always be there for everybody who needs it, and to judge everyone with kindness. Thank you.
לא תירא ניבר עלי גם רצף ולא ביום כדי שבשביל צריך ממצליחה אלף הוא רב מחלף עלי גרש על בניך לבשמה בחיים כזה גטה עזרי מרסי ותגונך ותגונך רבי כנקו נעונך אם הלכה לצערנה למובה וכל דרכך כפי מסעוך ותתיקו ואבן רגליך על שחל ופתן תדרור לרמוס כפי ותנגיל חשק ופלתהו עשה גבר גדע שמלכי ועיניהו עמו אנוכי בצרה אכל את זה ורחב את דהו ורחי מזביעהו והרי הוא משורתי
ויקדש שמי רבה, ועלמה אסגר ומודה, ועמיר ומודה, ועצמך וכנה, וגרם משיכם. וחייכון, וגמכון, וחייתכון, בית ישראל, בעגלה, ובזמן קריב, ואימו אמן. דמירן, בעלמה, באמור, אמן. שאמר רבה משמיה, חיים בשרה, בשבועה, ונחמה, בשזרה, ורפואה, ורעה, ושמחה, וכפרה. ורבע והצלחה. לנו כל עמו ישראל, באמור, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, ורחמיו יעשה שלום עלינו. ועל כל עמו ישראל, באמור, אמן.
Thank you everyone for coming. Daniel will make his way now to Eretz Israel. And the family will join him tonight on the same flight. We're all going to be with you guys on journey to Israel. If anyone wants to send us condolences words, you can send it by email. The family will read it afterwards. We read the family in the entire community. On this one. תמוז, תפיר ותלכי לחשב בכל דעות, וגלגלת ג'מיל, יקראי בין האמון ותלך תחת טוב אחר דעות, חן מסבירהו, והראו בשועתי, יוצר לסדר יום תצרר במעון המסון שיותר יצח וגיות שחל פרגות, יום כל תחת מוסר צהר שבמה איתו, ויום בחדר ותר ותר ותר
Okay. Excuse me. Okay. No problem. Okay.
ניסה אחריו? מה? ניסה אחריו? כמה אחרורים? כמה אחרורים? קרא לגוי או איבנגו?
Muito